Welcome to Story Corner, a place where we share the triumphs, struggles, and lessons learned from everyday people. Join us as we delve into the unique experiences that shape us and inspire us to live our best lives. Subscribe now for new stories.
Frank began his career as an officer at the age of 21. He had a partner who he later married. His job was very routinized. On a daily basis, he patrolled the streets, attended emergencies, and reporting his cases with an immense amount of paperwork. The worst thing was that he could not make mistakes, as the slightest error could sometimes cause his work to be in vain. When he turned 22, he met a man on the streets in a drunken state. The man had been served with a disturbance notice, was crying, and did not want to talk to anyone. The officer tried to talk to the individual, but he strongly refused, so the officer had to transport him to the police station. The man was eventually released after several hours, and that was their first contact. Frank was confused by his current situation by the man's attire, which included a fine shirt, jeans, and boots. Frank saw that the man's physical condition was getting worse as time went on. His once white shirt was now dark from dirt, and his hair had not been washed in several days. The issue was only made worse by the rain. When Frank turned 24, it was the happiest day of his life. His son, whom he named George, was born, and he and his wife took good care of him. Frank dedicated all his free time to spend with his son. It was his happiness and his greatest pride. Every day he went out to wash the streets, but not before saying goodbye to his wife with a tender kiss and to his son, telling him that he was his greatest pride. He would get into his patrol car, pick up his partner, and start his workday. They managed to capture many criminals daily, attend to cases of robbery, or attend to dangerous situations. After a long time on the streets, Frank noticed the man who had been drinking daily for almost 10 years. He was unsure of his recovery at the time. The man didn't even look at him as he came up to him. He even questioned whether he had broken any rules. The homeless man responded that he wasn't hungry when Frank asked him if he was, even though it was obvious that he hadn't eaten all day. Frank laughed at what the man had said. It's possible that the homeless man he was unaware of the officer's special guard for him. He was a terrific friend, and they frequently spoke through Frank always spoke first because the homeless man mostly listened to him. One day, the homeless man disappeared and was nowhere to be found. It seemed strange to Frank, who knows what could have happened to him. Maybe he got bored of being in that situation and became aware of it. Frank ate alone that day and returned home early as always. He spent time with his son, and in the evening he said goodbye to his wife and son, telling them that they were the best thing in his life. While patrolling the streets, he found a big surprise. The homeless man was already there, in the middle of the street, lying down covered in an old and damaged coat. As they passed him, pedestrians turned away, and his colleague laughed, making fun of the homeless man. Frank stopped his vehicle and rushed to the homeless man. The man's weak breathing was something he became aware as he got closer to him. Frank immediately contacted 911, and at 4:30 the ambulance showed up. Frank covered all of the homeless man's medical costs, including doctor visits, medication, lodging, and everything else because he didn't have insurance. Frank couldn't afford to pay out the nearly $300 necessary for the purchase. The next day, after finishing his shift at work, Frank went to see the man. Frank asked him why he was crying. The homeless man told him that he wanted alcohol and that he didn't want to be thinking about it. The memory made him feel that in the present. The officer told him that if he told him, he would help him. The homeless man, after so long, decided to tell the officer a little about his life. My name is Charles. 11 years ago I was on a duty in the army. I could get a lot of benefits from it, so I decided to do it. I had a wife who trusted me completely. When I came back from the service, she got pregnant. The test said it was going to be a girl. I had envisioned herself as my special daughter, and I would have devoted myself to her care like no one else in the world. I was actively job hunting, and a security officer position with a handsome salary caught my attention. However, that fateful afternoon, an intoxicated driver collided with her car. Upon arriving at the emergency room, I received the news that she had passed away. I was shattered beyond belief, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation. I wished to awaken from this nightmare, but it was an undeniable reality. I lost both my wife and a daughter 11 years ago, and she would have turned 11 in 2 months. The officer tried to calm the man down. He told him that he had to be strong. Charles looked at him with very irritated eyes. "You have a family, Frank?" he asked. "Yes," he replied. "Imagine that. What would you do if they called you right now and told you that you lost them forever?" That question left Frank in shock. "I really would be completely devastated, maybe worse than you," he replied. The homeless man looked at him and said, "I wish I had them in my arms right now," as he cried. Frank left the room and walked away while thinking about what he would do if that happened. Just imagine, and it made him cry. He didn't even want to know how he would really feel if it actually happened, but in that moment he figured out what he would want to do. He stood up and walked back into Charles' room and said, "I know it took me a while to figure it out, but I know what I would do if that happened. I would do everything I could to make my wife and son proud of me in heaven." The officer shed a few tears, as did the homeless man. Officer Frank became Charles' best friend. Got Charles rehabilitated, and being ex-military, he was able to find employment. Therefore, Frank's help in recommending him to certain places helped him to get a well-paying job. Charles, after almost 11 years, returned to visit the grave of his wife and daughter with a smile on his face and promised them that this time he would make them proud.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Story Corner. We hope you were inspired by today's story and learned something new. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, keep living life to the fullest.